Kev.
How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Right, we've all experienced lockdown and the issues that's had with racing and stuff like that. And some people have been lucky enough to have the odd race over the past year. Many people haven't. But we, Mountain Fuel support a race called the Lap in the Lake District, which is a kind of 47-ish miles around Lake Windermere. Fantastic route, brilliant for people as a first ultra. It's a really, really good one for kind of introduced to ultras, fully marked, really good. And it's one that you've entered.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and it's kind of from that, over a period of time, you've been using kind of some of our products, haven't you? For your kind of training and stuff like this. And then the other day when we were having a bit of a communication, you had a confession to make. And it was about using one of our competitor products called Tailwind. And I struggle to just say the word, to be honest with you. but in all seriousness, you wanted to kind of, we're a British brand. You kind of used them before you even heard of Mountain Fuel, got used to using them. And what I would say to people is, look, Tailwind, it's an all right product. It does a job. And you were kind of asking me, well, what's the difference between Tailwind, for example, and Mountain Fuel? And I think for us, fundamentally, there are quite big differences. Tailwind, for example, they have a kind of tagline, it's all you need all day. And in one sense, absolutely, a carbohydrate and electrolyte based kind of drink, you can do a lot of activities based on a fuel system like that, and you can do it for quite a lot of number of hours. The issue is that not everybody can. You can end up having issues with your stomach, having it for too long. But equally, one of the other issues is that all you are actually getting there is carbohydrate and some minerals, and your body actually needs more. It needs more than that. It needs vitamins. And if you don't give those things as well, the issue that you have, and also protein, the issue you have is that you actually don't recover as quick, and you get more muscle stress. So you get, so it's harder to recover. And yes, you might be getting energy and you might be getting some minerals to kind of help with that process. But actually, you'd probably perform a bit better if you had a better balance of nutrients going into your system. So, and I think, so that's, so when we kind of looked at that kind of direct comparison between Tailwind and Mountain Fuel, for example, we've got a whole range of products. That's the first difference. But if we were just to look at their energy drink and our energy drink, for example, we've got 12 different vitamins and minerals within Mountain Fuel, as well as the kind of carbohydrate mix. And like I said, you need the vitamins, because not only does that help you with energy provision, but it actually, you need vitamins for the production of energy, for that process to create energy. That combination of the vitamins and the minerals also helps with things like muscle contraction. And if you're actually replenishing the muscles with everything that's kind of going out and you're actually putting it back in, it's like I said to you, it's almost like you're helping them to recover while you're on the go. So, instead of if you imagine a petrol tank, instead of actually just filling up a little bit of the petrol tank, we're trying to fill the complete petrol tank to make sure it's got all the ingredients in there to make sure that your muscles are energized and replenished at the same time. So that's the kind of key difference. I think the reality is as well, despite the fact that we've got even more ingredients in there and it's a better, more rounded product, we're actually a lot cheaper as well, because Tailwind's an imported product. So you're essentially paying for it to be sent over from America, converted from dollars to sterling, and then a markup being placed on it. So you're essentially you're paying an import duty when you've actually got a product in the UK that's I would argue better, that actually is cheaper as well. So So really, that's the kind of the fundamental difference between the kind of drinks. And I think, I think you're going to try this weekend at the lab to kind of utilize. I don't know. Tell me, is it your plan to kind of, are you going to stick with Tailwind this weekend, or are you going to have a go at using the mountain fuel, energy fuel with the jellies? Or are you going to try both? What is your plan?
So, well, as you and I were speaking kind of briefly about, one of the things that I found is nutrition itself has got to be the most complex part of this whole racing game. I'm still although I'm a bit older, I'm still a baby at the running. I get into running late. I'm learning late. I find the nutrition part the most complex and most interesting thing ever. And I have went through a bit of a journey of, which a lot of people who watch this will identify with. So I started off from not eating, not fueling up properly before a race, to feeling really like I want to collapse, not understanding the benefits of protein afterwards, to then I started using like the cheap gels you could find in a local shop, tried the ones that would, really, really sickening, that would, turn your stomach. I went through all that. But then, as you see, I got introduced to Tailwind before I was aware of mountain fuel products. And Tailwind was one of those things where, people says, well, you won't need food because this has got everything you need. But then I was speaking to different people at that time, and I went on a bit of a combination of Tailwind with solid foods. But again, I was quite naive. And I was taking solid foods that really weren't going to digest properly during the race. But I was convincing myself, oh no, you have to eat these things. And I see everyone in the running magazines talking about eating foods, and I'm trying to eat and it's killing me. So actually, probably my favourite runner, John Albon, who I was like, stalking all his usual during the OCR season. I'm stalking all his stuff, and I went, what's this he's talking about? He's talking about mountain fuel. What's this? So obviously, started looking into the products, and then which led to me reaching out to you, saying, look, this sounds exactly what this is like the next step for me. But I guess the bit that I kind of never took fully in that conversation was I never asked you fully about the drink part, because I thought I'll play safe, stick with the drink I've got, and I'll replace these horrible gels with the mountain fuel jellies, which was the best thing I ever did. Because there's a misconception out there that people tell you, oh, you should really watch what you're doing with these gels and all this kind of thing. But it's actually Chris Brown, the American guy that's on Team Hawker, who, I love his advice when he gives me it. And he went, no. You need to take the gels in the right way. Absolutely. And if you take them in the right way, they're fantastic. And I went, what do you mean? And he went, right, listen, think about this. And he got me on working on durations between them, not leaving it till it was too late, working on when to take them, how to take them. And it just totally changed. My long runs transformed. I was hitting the spot bang on, and things just started to really lift up. But the bit which was a bit of I suppose, the eye-opener was I was getting the mountain fuel, the sachets, the drinks, but I perceived them to be different from the one-stop shop Tailwind, which in actual fact they weren't, and they tasted 100 times better. And I wished I'd actually reached out and said to you, like, months and months, can these drinks do the same thing? Because I was scared to make the switch. You know what it's like? They say, oh, don't change anything. Like, don't, once you get to that spot, don't risk any changes. And time kept going past. And then I got the sachets sent over the last time, and I actually used them for a couple of the long runs on the road, sort of mid to long run. And they were going down a treat. They felt fantastic. And then that's when I went, you know what, I'm going to go all the way with the lap, so just go fully with the product that one tastes the best. Because I mean, for guys and girls who are thinking about doing their sort of real big mile step up, there's a lot to be said about something that tastes good, because you just don't want to put anything in your mouth. You're like, everyone says, oh yeah, I can eat this, I can eat that. Yeah, I've seen most people struggle with putting things away, So I've kind of got to a spot. I think I'm good, and it's going to be really interesting to do it with my Mountain Fuel jellies, and I'm going to. And actually, I'm looking for the Mountain Fuel, the way the sachets come and stuff on the drinks, to be able to restock them in my bladders a lot easier.
Yeah.
Than working out the big bag that I had been doing and things like that. So yeah, that's the kind of Mountain Fuel journey. It's been step by step, yeah, and I had to admit to the Mountain Fuel guy that I was using another brand, but that's yeah. I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad I actually did raise it with you, because you were able to go, whoa, Kev, no, this, get a look at this, and you gave me the comparison, which I hadn't actually looked at, hadn't saw. There was actually a lot more in there. And it sounds like I'm on a sales pitch, but it's not. I just think if people are struggling trying to work out nutrition and plans and stuff like that, it's a really good start having a good product in your pocket.
Yeah.
That's after that, if you want to add in little bits of food, then you've got your drop bags and stuff like that. That's the bonus. And then I suppose, yeah, that's maybe stuff that you might talk about just now, but I think if you start off with something you can trust, then you're halfway there, and that's been now the last few months. I've been working with the jellies and, working with the product, and to a point where my stomach likes it, my head likes it, when, I know where it's coming. So it's been good. It's been really good.
Yeah, no, that's and that's what it's about. It's about a discovery of, it's like a journey that you go on when you're a runner, don't you? And I think the thing is, for us, the products that we kind of produce, we only produce things that fit within the system that we have. And, we produce them for us first. Then it kind of goes in this order. I'm quite selfish when it comes to running and stuff. So I kind of make things for me so I can run around the fells as much as I can, and then recover quick and go again the next day.
Yeah.
After that, my kind of family, because my daughter's she's type 1 diabetic. Because of that, she's got autoimmune disease. So she's got celiac. So she's celiac, so she can't have gluten. She's also got IBS. So bless her. She's, she has a pretty hard time when it comes to food and drink. So very sensitive. But, she enjoys going out in the fells and stuff. So it was really important that whenever we make stuff, if it works for me to be able to run as fast as I can on the fells, hammer my legs, and then get out again the next day because I'm selfish and I like it, then that's the first tick. Second tick, it's got to pass the stomach test. So you ain't going to get anybody, if you want to test it on somebody who's got bloody problems. There's no point saying, I sent it to this lab and I've got this scientific survey that says this.
Yeah.
You don't know what those folk could be they could have stomachs of iron. You test it with somebody who actually can't tolerate food very well, so having people like my daughter, IBS, I've got other users who we know who are runners, triathletes, who've got things like Crohn's and, various different IBD related diseases and things. So they're the testers. So you touched on the gels. Absolutely. Standard traditional gels are a syrup, and they require a load of water to help them go down. And even the ones that say that you don't need water with them, they're still a syrup. Your body still fights them, and you do need water to help them work within your system.
Yep.
And so we didn't want to kind of produce those. For our first few years with Mountain Fuel, we didn't have a gel. We knew that was a gap in the system. We didn't want to go to a manufacturer and just say, make us a gel, because I wanted to be able to turn around to people like you and say, right, mate, do X, Y, and Z, and you should have a good run. If I had to include a gel in that mix, I didn't know if you were going to have stomach issues.
Yeah.
And I've said this so many times, different podcasts, but last time I had a gel, warm day, running around Glen Terra, I'd had a long run, coming back around Glen Terra, had this gel because I was pushing fairly hard. no time at all, just so thirsty. And I kept going. And then by the time I got round to Lantrick, I was bouncing into the bracken. And I won't tell you what happened, but you can imagine, and it wasn't
Yeah.
pretty. And
Yep.
from that day, I never had another gel. And so that memory's stuck with me. And that's the kind of experience a lot of people can have, because they'll go to they might use the odd gel in training, then they'll go to a race, you've got the excitement of the race, they're running faster, it's a bit of a warmer day, they take on this gel, and suddenly their stomach's trying to erupt. And they're more worried about what's going to happen downstairs than the run. And they
Yep.
just have a terrible experience. And for me,
Yep.
running is about a positive experience. I run because I bloody love it. I want, so even if I might be running really hard, I might be finding it really hard. I'm going up a hill and it's bloody killing me, but I still love it. I still love
Yep.
pushing it. So I want to take on fuel that makes me feel good and gives me that feeling that I can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So the jellies, we made those with my daughter in mind, A, for diabetes, but B, for her stomach issues. So we use like similar to, like, people might have heard of the Morton gels. They're a much kind of thicker version of our hydrogel, and a damn sight more expensive, I'll add. But ours are much more of a kind of smoother consistency. So like you found, they literally go in your mouth, it melts, it's gone, they're refreshing. So you don't need to have drinks with them. Whereas with a lot of other products, you need to kind of wash it down a little bit with a bit of water and stuff. And to us, that's a kind of waste of your liquid, because you don't want to waste liquid washing food down. You want to basically save your liquid for proper hydration, kind of thing. So so the jellies, like you've found, and we've got like a new one now. So we've got like the kind of standard jellies, which are like 20 grams of carbs, and you've got electrolytes in them. We use a special pectin, which kind of creates the hydrogel. The hydrogel essentially, it kind of sucks the water into it, the carbohydrate and the minerals. So it just passes through your system a lot easier. But we've got like a new version of it, which is like a hydrogel plus. So this is like rocket fuel, this stuff. So this is basically 30 grams of carbs and 50 milligrams of caffeine. So
This
this
is the stuff I'm coming to get off you and on Friday
on
night.
Friday. Yeah, this is latter stages of the lap when I want to finish strong. I'm starting to get mentally fatigued. This is what you rely on, and absolutely, and it really is. This is, you see a lot of the marathon runners have been given, like the elite guys have been given, and they're sponsored by Morton. And you mentioned John Alban before. He's our athlete, so he was buying off us. Sorry. He was buying off us, before we even had any kind of relationship with him. He was buying off us because he really liked our products. He saw the benefit of them. Thing. We can go to him and say, "Hey, John, here, we're going to give you an absolutely bucket load of free stuff. Can you use it and promote it?" Just, we don't do that with anybody. People like it and love it. So that's the kind of how the jellies work. And we've also got like a chia gel. So this is again another alternative to gels. Have you tried the chia
love that one? Love that. Love it.
Yeah. So this is this is more like a kind of, it's more like a baby food type paste, isn't it? So it's not your kind of gel consistency, which is, kind of almost a liquid as soon as it goes into your mouth. This has more of a kind of food feel, isn't it? So this is a good alternative. And again, that's why, you said before about flavor. We try to make everything so it's like nicely flavored, but not overly flavored. But we also try to make things so you get different kind of textures. So the chia gel and the jellies, they're great in tandem, because again, you're not going to get kind of texture fatigue or flavor fatigue. And you've also got two different kind of energy releases. So you've got your chia gels, which are like a slower energy release, and you've got your sports jellies, which are kind of faster acting. So, for example, my daughter, she'll have one of these, a chia gel, and then when her blood starts going low through activity, she'll have one of these, a sport gel, to bring her up, kind of bring her up quicker. So for us, if we know we're going to be really hammering it soon, we'd have one of them. On a longer effort where we know we're not going to have to put intensive bursts or whatever, you could have a chia gel kind of thing. So So that's kind of those. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. So that's kind of those. But I think, do you know what might help is if we actually talk through the nutrition strategy for the lab, that would probably give people a really good idea of how you were intending to do it, and then what I would have suggested to do using our system or whatever, you know, whatever other kinds of foods kind of thing. So what was your kind of plan? Because how many hours do you think you'll be on the go for?
Do you know something? And this is the truth. I know people say this, but I have honestly not once thought about the time part.
Yeah.
Because as you know, so my background to the ultra scene has been the virtual stuff last year during the pandemic. So I did really well in the virtual stuff.
Yeah.
But this is my first proper introduction to the scene, if you like. So I've tried to just say, just get the time out of your head. I'm not giving it, you know, I expect to be crawling across the line or anything like that. I might be, but I'm not saying that. But I'm not, yeah, time isn't the goal here. It's, you know, this race opens the door to other things. You know, it's a qualifying race for sort of bigger things, and you know, so sorry, it's a qualifying distance for bigger things. So yeah, I want to, yeah, it would be good to just come in and not feel completely empty and really, really, really horrible. It would be good to come in with the head held high, and yeah, and feel like I got the nutrition part right.
Yeah.
Because I've certainly put in the training element for it. You know, we've been training from October. So the nutrition side is going to be the bit where we're going to see how did the plan go?
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you touched on there is absolutely right. I think that kind of times and timings on things, it's good to have an idea of what your time's going to be, but that's also a pressure that people put on themselves. And I think pressure, especially when it's your kind of first ultra, and even more so in your second ultra or second race of any type. And I think what I would say is for the lap, it's a kind of case of whatever your expectation is. So say, for example, it was a normal race and you were all setting off together in a big huddle, but you will be at the lap, but you'll be socially distanced. It's almost like your kind of ego says, right, I kind of want to finish in the top, you know, quarter, 10th, whatever. But actually, maybe what you should do is you say, right, I want to finish in the top 10th. So I'll go and stand here. But then what you need to do is actually then go and take 10 yards back. Get away from those folk, because all those folk up there are all going to be setting off. There'll be a tiny handful that can run at the pace that they'll set off at, and a big majority that can't sustain it. And what you don't want to do is be setting off too quickly, because that immediately buggers up your nutrition strategy, because you're burning up more glycogen, you're burning up more energy, you're stressing your muscles more. And psychologically, it's much more fun overtaking people all day than being overtaken.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the kind of long fell races in the lakes is called Wasdale, and it's a bloody tough fell race, really tough. And one year I said, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually, and I convinced my mate who was in the race as well. So I had somebody a bit of company inside. I said, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to the back, and we're going to start literally at the back. And do you know what we're going to do? We're going to overtake folk all day, and we're going to be steady away, and we're just going to cycle. We're just going to enjoy it. We're not going to go off like the clappers. We're going to go steady away, but I can guarantee we'll just overtake folk all day, and we'll just chip away, and we're going to finish with smiles on our faces. There was a bit of grimacing in between because it's a bloody hard race. But do you know what? I got to the end, and absolutely, could I have run a quicker time? Definitely. Without a doubt, I could have run a quicker time. But I got to the end, and I was in really good condition, and I just really enjoyed the whole bloody race. I
love that. I love that. That's great.
Because the reality was, with the quality of people there, I was never going to be in a first, second, third. So position is irrelevant. If you're not finishing in the top three, position is almost irrelevant. It's an ego thing. So really, to me, the race then becomes an experience. Absolutely. The next time you go, you might want to get a PB. You might want to beat it. Totally. But then that's the next issue. That psychology of, you go and do a marathon, for example, and you set a time, and suddenly you've got this pressure of, right, I've got to beat that time. I've got to beat that time. All your train's about beating that time. I've got to beat that time. It's got to be perfect. And then you get into the race, and again, you set off too quick because you're trying to beat that time. And then you might get to midway and you're either on track for a PB or you're not. If you're not on track for the PB, then your mind starts playing games and you give up, or you're on track, but suddenly you hit the wall because you went far too bloody fast. So you never really were on a PB. I think psychologically, how people approach running and races makes such a massive difference to the whole experience and how they're doing. I think the more relaxed folk can be, the better you will run, because you're far more smooth, you run better your nutrition will be, because you'll actually have time to think about it and do it properly, and the whole experience is better. So absolutely. So first and foremost, your attitude towards the lap is perfect. But
no, I think I'm listening to what you're saying, and I absolutely love it. You know, you watch a lot of the stuff I talk about on Fit As Your Dads to the guys and stuff, and I'm fantastic at giving out advice. I am terrible at taking my own advice. I am brilliant at telling people about not living rent-free in their heads, you know, about understanding about the pressures and about how you're wasting energy. But wow, do I put some pressure on me. But this is interesting, like this one, because I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing people on a start line. I'm really looking forward to just, you know, being out there and feeling the pain and feeling the just, you know, all the emotions. And I love the idea of starting at the back. And just,
you know what? The other good thing about an ultra is that actually it's a different mentality for folk. Folk are far more chatty, because ultimately you should be running in your chatty zone. So you can talk to people. So actually, if you start at the back, if you're a bit of a social, you know, you like to have a bit of a crack to pass the time. I annoy people in fell races. I'll talk to all sorts of folk. My philosophy is, if you talk to somebody while they're running, if they're running harder than they should, they're going to struggle to talk. So when they're talking, it slows them down. So you're always going to keep up with them. And then so the beauty of chatting to folk in an ultra is that you should all be at that pace anyway. And it helps pass the time, because like you said, an ultra can be a bloody grind. It can be painful. You're out there for hours. So you might as well get to know folk around you.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, I mean, this is me speaking for me, but like, you know, I'm 43 this year. I mean, I'm doing it for to give myself a massive pat on the back. Every single thing I do, every single thing I've done this last 3-4 years, I've managed to do a lot of things I'm really, 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 really proud of myself about. If come Sunday morning when I wake up, I'm not going to be celebrating that I was 66th position, and instead of 87th or something like that. I'm not going to care about that. I'm going to be celebrating that I travelled down to the Lake Windermere and I took on 47-mile ultra and I smashed it. That's what I'm going to be celebrating. And I'm going to be dying to tell my kids that I did that. Not that I was a certain place and a certain time. Yeah, all that might be interesting in its own time, but that would be what matters on Sunday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think really it's a case of what were you thinking of as far as what amount, which products were you thinking of taking on every hour over the kind of period you're going to be out? Bearing in mind that there is, feed stations.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's from what I read, what I've kind of been looking at and stuff online and the website and stuff like that. It sounds like this race is super organised in terms of their aid stations and the fact that you've got a drop bag. So the drop bag, I guess, is really important because that's going to be filled with some things I like, you know, so things that I'm going to really light up when I see, and it's going to have some high protein drinks in it as well. So these worked really, really well. When I did the GB Ultras Everest race, I decided to attack it. And I went for it over 2 days, the 135 miles. And the thing I learned that weekend was the protein part. I was getting protein in, and I'd never really fully appreciated the protein part. So that'll be in my drop bag. Those high protein drinks that
Well,
go
what
down
we
well.
normally suggest to folk is that basically, and again, it depends convenience, this that, and the other, but we normally say that you basically use one of like the recovery fuels. You have it mixed with water, because absolutely you want to take on a protein mix, but one of the advantages again of having a kind of pre-planned kind of endurance supplement kind of thing, which is obviously what the recovery fuel is you still getting that kind of carbohydrate to protein mix.
Yeah, that's
so
a good point.
We normally say that kind of like within a drop bag, or if there isn't a drop bag, you'd put a sachet in with your stuff in your vest or whatever, and every kind of 6 to 8 hours you would have a recovery fuel mixed with water or whatever. We generally would just say water because it's far more convenient, but some people put in a milk equivalent to the drop bag or whatever, and you just have that, and like you found, it gives you such a lift. Now if you within the GB Ultras, if you just used like a normal protein and you felt the benefit, having actually something with the right matrix of carbohydrate and minerals and protein, again, it's that thing of your brain knows what you're putting in it. So believe me, you start necking that, and within 10 minutes, your brain's like, oh, mate, you've done me good there. I'm lacking a load of this stuff, and you've put it in me. I love you. I'll perform, and I'll go again. And honestly, the lift it can give you, putting the right stuff in the system, just gives you that mental lift, but more importantly, it gives you the physical lift because it's genuinely doing something. It's genuinely replenishing your muscles, starting that kind of DOMS process. So you're offsetting the DOMS because you're starting out, you're rebuilding the muscles, you're repairing them on the go. So it's absolutely perfect. So what did you envisage as far as kind of drink an hour? So what were you kind of thinking of, kind of drink, jellies, bars, whatever? What were you thinking every hour?
My thinking is I'm going to obviously run in with my vest, my 2 flasks. My plan is, and this obviously after we chatted, and my plan is I'm going to be filling up, going to have my couple of sachets, I'm going to be filling up my 2 flasks, and then I'm going to be stocking with my jellies. Yeah. So at the aid stations, I'm going to be then refilling those flasks. So if
how long? So have you got water in one flask and mountain fuel in another, or have you got mountain fuel in both, or how were you thinking?
My thoughts were go with mountain fuel in both flasks. Yep. So basically, I've got quite good on my longer runs at just sipping. So just continuously when I need it, just little sips, keep feeding, little and often. Yeah.
And just on that, it's really important that you actually, it's little and often from the start. So literally 15 minutes in, you start that process and you start. Okay. So we're going to start sipping early, 15 minutes in. For example, I'll tell you what, you meant John Alban again. He basically sets on his watch. He puts a little timer on his watch. Now, not everybody needs to do that. And especially if you've trained to sip early and to sip regularly. And that's one thing that we always stress to people in training. It's like, people put, especially new runners, will put onto Facebook, they'll say, I'm going to do a 20-mile run. You know, what do you think I should do? And then you'll get a load of folks saying, oh, I have nout for 20 miles. You know, I've nothing for 20 miles. You don't need nout. You know, and then the other people say, oh, well, you know, I've read online, you've got enough glycogen and energy in your muscles for at least an hour of exercise or an hour and a half or whatever it may be. And then, but what I say to people is, look, the reality is, absolutely, you don't have to take anything at all. But the problem is, you will be feeling very tired by the end of your run. But more importantly, going back to what we were saying earlier about replenishing your muscles, if you're not looking after them and replenishing them and feeding them properly, then actually you're actually just doing more muscle stress. So you'll also hear about people who kind of say, oh, I was absolutely flying. I was flying in this, I was doing so well. And then I started getting cramps and I can't stand it. You know, I didn't get enough electrolytes. Forget your electrolytes. The reality is it probably was a combination of muscle stress just because you were running faster than you would have in training because it was a race. And then because you were running faster, you also probably didn't fuel properly. So if you imagine that your muscles are loads of little fibers and they're all working away together and they're contracting and expanding. If you're not, and it's almost like a sponge as well. So if you're sucking everything out of that sponge, those fibers get drier. So they're essentially getting dry and they're rubbing together and they're getting stressed. And then they start cramping up because they're like, mate, you know, you're absolutely ripping me to shreds here. Stop.
Yep.
And when your body says stop, it does something about it. And in this instance, it contracts your muscles and says, I ain't working for you anymore. But if you feed them and look after them, they work for you. And they're like, hey, mate, keep going, keep chucking it in. I'll keep hammering it for you. So that's where the kind of principle of that little and often look after it. So going back to what I was saying, practice in training. You know, you don't have to go out and eat lots and drink lots in training. You don't even necessarily on a shorter run even have an energy fuel or anything. Just have water, but practice the principle of little and often, little drink, little sip, wherever it may be, just to make sure you're in the habit. So when you're in your race on Saturday, from the start, little and often. So over that, for example, let's say that's a typical distance, you know, for leg one, it's 11 kilometers, 10, 11 kilometers. And that's typical, say, between the distances of feed stations. Then what were you envisaging, kind of like how much of that energy drink you've got 2 sachets essentially, so you've essentially got 80 grams of carbs in those 2 drinks. So what is it you were envisaging drinking and eating over that first 11k?
I guess I was in my head, and I know all that can go out the window, but in my head I was imagining, you know, that I would be sipping little and often, and when I come into the station, I'll be taking one of my jellies. You know, and obviously I'll see what's in the aid station if I want to have. There's some nice juicy things that are, you know, some things that will go down well. I'm going to try and take them on. If I have to then replenish my flask, then I'll do that at the station where there's water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just sort of make sure that the flasks aren't running low.
Yeah.
And that I'm getting in. I'm getting the jellies when, you know, at a regular interval, not.
So how many kind of minutes ish do you think you would plan to have a jelly, for example?
So in training, and again, I know it's very different. So in training, I started off, when I started practicing, I was taking them every hour. So every 60 minutes, I was taking a jelly. And then sort of as I was getting into the sort of more intense sessions or longer sessions and stuff towards the end of the training there, I was down to maybe about 45 minutes. But a lot, those were quite big elevation days, and I wasn't carrying, excuse me, I didn't have the option that my flasks were going to get refilled. I was out and there was no coming back until you know, I completed the full route. So dog joining me there. So yeah, I was an hour cutting back to 45, 50 minutes towards the end. But because I'm going to be able to refill my flasks, then in my head, I'm thinking that, you know, I'm going to be probably taking it, trying to stick to around about that hour mark. Or yeah, it's because it's, as you know, Rupert, you've got the aid stations changes things because it's giving you stuff that you're not carrying.
And it will have, you know, luckily at the lab, you know, they've got a proper mix, you know, they've got everything you'd normally find, you know, they've got your little flapjacks, your this, your that, they're kind of typical kind of food, but they've also got some really good kind of quality stuff there as well, you know, your more kind of fruit and savory stuff as well. But they will also have little bits of our feel good bar, so our kind of flapjack version of a bar broken up into little bits. They will also actually have some jellies, you know. They won't have stacks because obviously they want people to be self-supported, but they'll have emergency jellies essentially for folk. What I would say is that what would be a useful tip for your next run would be that you're saying training, you're kind of sipping often. I would start kind of like trying to monitor roughly, like if you're sipping regularly, am I sipping a bottle over an hour and a half? Am I sipping a bottle full over 2 hours? Because what you need to know roughly is how many grams of carbs you're taking on board on an hourly basis. Now, what you find is everybody's very, very different. So, for example, if you are an elite top end runner who's absolutely smashing the pants out of it and wants to try and finish on the podium, first place, break a course record, that guy will probably very unlikely have anything at a feed station, and he'll be looking to absolutely maximize the carbs that he's taking on board, and he's going to be pushing the limits of the carbs he can take on before his body stops being able to take them on and he starts feeling sick. Because ultimately that's what happens. You take on too much food or carbs, your body eventually just says, mate, stop it, I've had enough. Stomach shutting down until it sorted itself out. So typically your runner is going to be taking on anything from 20 grams of carbs an hour to 80 grams of carbs an hour, or even more, depending on the athlete. But what you've also got in kind of runners like ourselves, you know, we're not going to be breaking the course record. You know, we also, if we're training well and we're training long and we're training hard, you'll hear a lot of people talk about fat adaptation, and you'll see people on Facebook saying, oh, I'm a fat adapted athlete. You know, I've been training fat. And it's like, no disrespect, when I was born, I was fat adapted. The moment I came out of my mum's womb, I was fat adapted, just like you were, just like they were, just like every single human being on this planet. We're all fat adapted. We all naturally take our energy from different sources depending on our kind of activity and our fitness level. And the fitter we are, generally, it kind of naturally kind of flows. The fitter you are, the longer you train and run, the body just becomes more adept at just fueling in a different way. And you just get more used to being able to run further on different things. However, if you want to really push yourself, you've then still got to, so I might be able to go and do a 3-hour run tomorrow and not take anything on board and feel all right. However, if I want to go on a 3-hour run tomorrow and actually run further and feel better and recover quicker, I should take stuff on board, and I should take a decent amount on board. And that's what you've kind of got to find that balance. So when you're doing the kind of ultra stuff, you've got to bear in mind because you've got feed stations, this is why it's really important to know roughly what you're taking on board when you're sipping, because what I would say is that really you want one bottle, for example, to be lasting you, say, an hour and a half to 2 hours, very much depending on the heat, because if it's really hot, you will naturally drink more. So actually it might only last an hour and a half, might even last an hour. And if you're kind of talking like a bottle an hour, then that's 40 grams of carbs. You're then having your jelly, so that's 60 grams of carbs. You're then grabbing stuff at a feed station. Very much depending on what you're grabbing, you might be grabbing another 20 grams of carbs, some you're up to 80 grams of carbs. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 feed stations. You know, by the time you get halfway, you might find that actually the pace that you're going at, you're not burning 80 grams of carbs of glycogen.
Yep.
You've got
Yep.
this build up in your stomach. The kind of stuff you've been picking up at the feed station doesn't kind of metabolize well. So
Yep.
everything's building up to, and suddenly, before you know it, you're halfway, 3/4 of the way, you're starting to feel like shit. You're starting to feel sick. You're feeling nauseous. And it's an absolute misery run from to the end, and it's a sufferfest, and it's horrendous. So that's what we're trying to avoid. So what I would say is you want to kind of, while you can be kind of quite relaxed about stuff, I would kind of think, right, between the feed stations, I would be going for kind of, if you know you're definitely going to be maximizing feed stations, I'd be aiming for roughly 40 grams of carbs an hour, roughly. So that is basically one jelly and kind of a quarter, a third, or a half of an energy fuel, and then maybe some nibbles of something else. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if
Yep.
you've got anything else that you, little bits of bar or whatever you carry. If you're not
Yep.
carrying any bar, then absolutely half an energy gel and a half an energy fuel and a jelly is your 40 grams of carbs. You get to the feed station, and then you've got a choice. Then you can have whatever you want then, because you've made allowances
Yep.
for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. That sounds quite a good approach when you explain it like that, and what you're getting out and what you're putting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
that
you know what another key thing is as well, by having a bit of a plan in advance. Another thing that a lot of people make the mistake of in ultras is that they'll pack the bag, they'll pack all the food, and it's like going on holiday. Like, so when I go on holiday, I kind of like pack all my stuff, and then I think, oh, I've got enough t-shirts. I'll just put another couple of t-shirts in. Oh,
yeah.
actually, I'll put a vest in as well, and I'll put this in, I'll put that in. And it's the same with food with ultras. People carry this massive picnic of food around with them, and your pack's heavy enough because you've got all your basic required kit. Then you've got a whole load of food in there, you've got your drinks in there, and they get to the end and they've still got half this bloody stuff in, and they've carried it around. And weight matters, weight drags you down. So if you can really think about realistically what you're going to be having between the feed stations, and you know that there's quality stuff at those feed stations, then you don't have to carry quite as much.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
does make a massive difference, particularly in those kind of latter stages.
Yep.
So I would say early doors, I would allow for what you're doing. Drop bag, then you need to have your protein equivalent. I would always say the mountain fuel recovery, or even some people use our morning fuel, because again, that kind of mixes into either a little kind of baby paste type thing, or even like a shake. And again, that's got a kind of carbohydrate and protein matrix in it. And you know, this is fantastic. So for example, like you've got Sabrina Vergy, who's doing her Wainwright's at the moment. So she's drinking raw energy. She's absolutely nailing loads of jellies because she just really likes them. Go down so well. But she absolutely, when she's getting to the end of those legs, she's making sure she's getting a recovery fuel in to set her up for the next, because she's going non-stop. She's literally over the 6 days, 6.5 days or whatever. She'll, like, if she has 9, 10 hours, 11 hours max sleep, I don't think she'll even do that. Do you know what I mean? Over that period of time. And so she needs to properly get that protein on board. And she's having loads of other food, you know, tons of food, loads of drinks. So if I was you, make sure your drop bag's got that in. Like you said, even having some of those, like I love rice pudding. So it's like, I would have a little tub of rice pudding in there as well, just because it's something different. They definitely won't have rice pudding on the aid stations. So
Yeah,
it's like you said, it's that little treat to
yeah,
look forward to. That's something that you know is in your bag and it's worth getting to that drop bag.
and it's going to go down, and
It's gonna,
it feels like you've had something, but not too heavy.
yes, it's like a food, and it's, well, I suppose that's kind of like why we did the cheer gels, because it's like the sports jellies are fantastic, but essentially they're a jelly, they're very smooth, like, so it's great, and you can have those, you know, people will rely on these in the last stages of races, but like you said, having that feeling of actual food going down as well makes a massive psychological difference as well, doesn't it? You just feel
Yeah,
you're getting something
yeah,
different. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
so
yeah,
really, so I think your strategy is exactly as it is. What you might find is if it is a bit warmer or in the latter stages, you might find you want to dilute down your energy drink a little bit. As much as anything, if you've been on the go for however many hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever, then you might find that you just start getting, you naturally get flavor fatigue. Everything naturally starts, the tastes intensify. So we said, for look, dilute it down, then it's not going to feel taste as strong, but it's still 100% active. Because if you drink, you know, the full, you know, you might put it into 2 bottles, one sachet into 2 bottles. By the time you've drunk them both, you're still going to be getting 40 grams of carbs out of both. But what you might do is you might find in the latter stages, you actually maybe just have a few extra of the jellies in there. But what you have is you have the caffeinated ones, maybe. So you'd maybe have a couple of the you know, the sports jelly plus, or maybe a couple of the cola jellies. So you know that you might not be getting as many carbs out of your drink, but you're still going to be getting your carbs and a refreshing carb out of the jellies. And you often get to that stage later in races where you just feel like you can't have any more solids. You can't, you're struggling to face food. And what people find is they don't have that issue with the jellies, because your brain knows that literally as soon as they go in your mouth, they melt, they're gone. And that's not an issue to your head and your brain, because it's like, I know these are nice and easy on the stomach. They taste all right. Well, they taste really good. And, you know, they give me decent energy. So,
mhm.
so I possibly kind of look to doing that. Do you ever eat anything? Do you have any bars and stuff when you're on the go, or do you find that you can't really eat solidy stuff while you're running?
I'm a bit of a hit and miss, so been trying these kind of waffle type things recently,
Yeah,
sort of honeycomb waffles.
yeah,
Been trying them, and in the first couple of goes, they went down okay, and then when I tried it the last time I tried it, it was a real chew. I was like, oh, maybe these aren't so good.
yeah.
you
I
know,
think things like that you can get down early on.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
once you get in beyond a couple of hours and you're running and stuff, it's just really hard. And I think that's where it becomes a more of a kind of jelly, cheer gel
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
scenario. If you're pacing slow and steady, then that's where like the feel good bars can be quite good. And especially if you break them down. So like we always say to folk when they have these, you know, you'd only have kind of a quarter at a time, but you might have that
yeah,
quarter in 2 bits. Do you mean because we use like a coconut oil and flaxseed, they're very oily in a sense, so they'll literally break in your
yeah.
mouth, and they're a lot easier to kind of consume. They don't go sawdusty like your flapjacks or your waffle type things.
I think that's maybe why I've been practicing a bit more with the drinks and the jellies, because I want to be more comfortable doing it if I really am struggling to eat food, then I'm going to be used to this,
Catch your back up.
using these two things. And I think maybe what you've just maybe educated me a little bit tonight, and maybe, yeah, if I cut back a little bit on the drinking, as I don't go through, that I can maybe control the carb level to the right level
Yeah,
for the pace that I'm moving.
yeah,
Um, and then my aid stations, just little bits, little bonus. If something
yeah,
there that's nice, and then, like you say, maybe switch out my normal protein for the recovery at the drop bag. And like you say, I'm also a fan of things like rice pudding and stuff like that. Things like that. Just a little bag of treats that's not going to be bloating. Yeah, and really base the structure around the jellies in the drink.
Yeah.
The question I've got about in terms of the caffeine related ones, do you think you should be? I mean, my thinking is I would keep them back till later in the race. Is that where you sit, or do you think?
No. The thing is with caffeine, if you once you start taking it, it's like Pringle. Once you start, you can't stop. So it's like with caffeine, once you start taking it, it's just suppressing your fatigue essentially. So, but then if you stop taking it and it wears off,
you
then
crash.
essentially you just get absolutely overrun. You're like, because you've essentially been holding back this wave of your body basically saying, I'm bloody knackered, mate. And your caffeine's kind of holding it back and stimulating you and saying, no, you're full of energy, mate. You're full of energy. Go for it. But then as soon as you stop taking it, it just hits you and absolutely you crash out. So what we say is, like, some people on a shorter race, so a shorter race, like when I say short, anything kind of 3 hours, I call a shorter race, then absolutely you can take caffeine from the start, gets you wired, gets you going, but you've got to, but again, what caffeine does is stimulant. It's not actually giving you energy, it's thinking you've got energy. So you've got to really, that's why, we kind of like, we only put it in some of the products, but we make sure we put it in products that have got carbohydrates in them, because you think you've got energy, so you're naturally burning more energy because you're pushing harder. So you've got to put the actual energy in. So you've got to actually have the carbohydrate within the product itself. So I would save it for that kind of anything from the kind of last third. Do you know what I mean? It could be anything from the third to the last hour, whatever, depending on the race that you're doing, the style of race, and as well depending on the time of race. So if you're going into an overnight period, like say you're definitely going to be finishing in the dark, then there's a good chance you're bloody knackered, you're really fatigued. There's more of an opportunity that you might say trip over things. So you've got to be switched on. So what I would say is, in those instances, if you've got, say, 2 or 3 hours to finish a race and it's going to be dark, definitely start hitting the caffeine then, because if nothing else, it's going to have you a bit more alert, a bit more wired. You're going to be more focused, knowing what's going on. You won't be as mentally fatigued. So you're less likely to frustratingly stumble, fall, sprain an ankle, and ruin, and kind of make that last few miles a bloody pain, So so for the lap, I would basically say you've talking from, I'm just looking here, I've got the feed stations here. So you've basically got from, say, Clearbarrow, you've basically got 14k, you've got 14, 18, so you've got about 20k from the kind of third to last one. If you had, so from where your drop bag is at Troutbeck, you've basically got 11k to Clearbarrow. Then you've got another, so you've got 11, 19, 33. So you've got 37-ish K left there. That's probably a bit much. So I would say from Clearbarrow, so the one after Troutbeck, so one after you've had your drop bag, that's where you could consider starting to take on the caffeinated the jellies. But if you're feeling good,
my plan was I'm not going to carry them. I'm not going to have them even on my position. They're going to be in my drop bag. So I'm really looking forward to getting the raw ones, the new ones. So they will be in the drop bag. There'll be nothing caffeine. I really like the chia ones, the chia product. I really like the orange. So that's the ones I'm going to carry. And I'm going to have the raw ones to go into my vest. But like you say, I'm not going to use them until I'm ready to kick or whatever. Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And as well, going around the lake, when you start coming back down towards the lake, that is where you're going to experience kind of more rooty kind of terrain, more kind of, you know, it is that kind of terrain that you do need to be switched on, but you're also going to be, you're going to be muscle stressed by then as well. So you might not pick your legs up as well, and this, that, and the other. So it's the perfect
Yeah.
time to get that caffeine in, get zoned in, try and kick on. And you know what? Even if you actually don't go any quicker, psychologically you think you will because of
Yeah.
the caffeine. So it kind of makes you feel better. You know, to everybody else, you're still this shuffling, kind of broken ultra runner, but in your head, you're flowing like Mo Farah.
Sounds good.
So, and then for me as well, and this is something I'm really anal on myself. I have at the finish, I'll basically I'll finish something, and I will go and I will make up a recovery fuel, and I will get a recovery fuel into me, made up with milk. You know, with time I finish during the race, absolutely with water. Finished, I personally have semi-skim milk with the recovery, and it's
Yeah.
something massively that I can look for.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And
Makes
again,
such
I'm
a
maybe
difference.
not using the recovery ones, but I'm going to. So I'll get onto these this weekend. But yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Whenever I finish any big tough session, within 30 minutes of finishing, get the protein in, feed the muscles.
Yeah.
What a difference it makes.
Yeah, huge
To the
difference, huge difference.
you,
And I
you
think,
just feel so much better.
yeah, and I think the other thing to consider is that night also possibly having like one of like the night fuels,
Yeah.
because again, that's basically while you're asleep, that is replenishing you. So you've had your recovery immediately afterwards, that starts the replenishment process. But actually, a brilliant time to fix yourself is when you're asleep. So
Well, let me tell you about your night fuel.
yeah,
So, I, I actually ordered that. It was a couple of weeks ago. I decided to give it a bash.
yeah,
And when I was checking, I've always had the protein cold, you know, with water.
yeah,
You never really had it with milk or anything like that. So that was what I always used. But when I got the night fuel one, I noticed straight away in the back of it, it says, "I'll make it with warm milk." And I'm like, this should be interesting, you know. Let's give this a go. So I make it up at night time. And I've got to tell you, and this is without a word of a lie,
yeah,
I am not a good sleeper, you know. So historically, I don't need as much as the next guy, you know. It just is what it is. I don't fight it anymore.
yeah.
But I started with this night fuel just before bed, maybe about half an hour before bed. I've been sleeping better, you know, with
Well,
this.
you're not the only person that says, but again, it's because of the protein. It's got tryptophan in as well, so it's that amino acid profile as well. You know, it's just that. And again, it kind of like what you're doing is a lot of this is if you put the right stuff in your body, your brain tells your body, this is good. This is what I need. This is
Yeah,
helping me. And it is, you know, so it's like you put the right kind of energy fuels in, your body will perform. You put the right stuff in, you know, to help you recover. It says, oh, this is good, right? I'm going to relax now. I'm going to
yeah,
chill out and relax. I'm going to make the most of this because I don't often
yeah.
get this treat. He doesn't often look after me like this. So I'm going to make the
No,
most of it. And it really does make a difference. And the night fuel is fantastic. Pre-event, it's brilliant because it means, you know, a lot of people kind of like, especially if you've got to get really early for a race, it's great to have pre-event. It can help you sleep. You know, if you've got massive pre-race nerves and stuff and got loads going on, you've got about 1,000 tick lists, you know, you might struggle to get to sleep because your hotel room you're in and stuff. But when you do, it helps you get into a deeper sleep. But more
yeah,
importantly, when you wake up, it means that you don't need to have as much to eat either because you've actually been feeding yourself overnight. So you can get away with having less of a breakfast because often, you know, a race will start at 6 o'clock. So you're having your breakfast at 4 or even
yeah,
earlier if you're driving there and you just
yeah.
don't have a lot. So, you know, it helps with that process as well. The fact that it's kind of feeding you, so it kind of offsets how much you then also need when you wake up kind of thing. So
No, I think it's a great. you know, I think it's a really good product. You know, and it's interesting. I'm glad you brought that one up. Not to do with sort of the lap, but just the fact that that's been helping me sleep soundly. You know, I just, you know, I'm not up as much and through the night. You know, it feels like a good rest.
Yeah.
So I think I'll sleep great the night after the lap anyway. But you know, I'll have my beer first, and then I'll have my. But no,
Hey, when you
you
get,
know,
well, that's the thing, as part of your finishing, you actually get your bottle of beer as well. So there you
oh
go.
yes, yes,
So superb. So really, for like, I think what's going to be really interesting is that, you know, we've talked about kind of a rough plan of what you're going to do at the lab. And I think what will be really interesting, you know, is actually to do this next week and
yeah,
have a crack about what went on at the lap and actually how it went and what you
yeah,
experienced, and you know what I mean, and how the reality, because everybody's so different, and I think it's really important that people kind of get a real picture of what it's really like to do an ultra, what it's really like, how you felt, you know, when you tried it. You might turn around and say, well, actually, I wish I'd maybe, you know, had a bit more of this or a bit less of this, or I got to this stage and I was feeling a bit, you know,
yeah.
too sure, I was struggling to eat, wasn't sure what to do, you know, and I think it'd be good to kind of go back and kind of analyze it and you know, kind of use that as a building block for when you next go, because you might be going further and longer, taking
Yep.
those lessons and trying to apply them.
No, I think it's a good point, and this is why I was kind of looking forward to doing this, because one, I'm really interested to see if this sort of approach is going to work for me, but
Yeah.
I'm equally like really excited the thought that our chat about this,
Yeah.
and then if we look at it how it actually went, it might actually help other people who are
Yeah.
in the same boat as me, and they're trying to, well, men and women that are trying to work out what should I do, what should I. They maybe have ideas about gels that's maybe not accurate. They maybe have ideas about drinks, just loads of different things. So it's going to be funny to look,
Yeah.
to chat next week and see, right, we said we were going to do this,
Yeah.
right, what really happened?
Yeah. Did you really set off at the back?
Yeah.
Hey, but I'll
No,
tell you what, just
I went
I was sprinting. I was leading for 100 meters, mate. So,
yeah,
but I think on just one thing I would like to say, for especially doing those kind of ultras, is that look, a lot of people when they first start doing them as well, and even the really experienced folk, if you are running for a long time, you're putting effort in, your body, your brain, at some point might turn around to you and say, right, mate, you're making me run. I've only got so much blood in my body. It
yeah,
needs to go to the vital organs, and it needs to go to my working muscles.
yeah,
So if you're putting in a lot of effort and you're really pushing yourself beyond your limits because you want to do really well, one of the downsides of that, in a sense, is unless you're kind of trained, unless you're kind of have really practiced what you're doing, the first thing that your body will shut down on you is your stomach. So, you know, it's inevitable at some points during an ultra, for example, that people might have periods where they're just feeling a little bit nauseous, or it might be that they're just really struggling to eat certain types of food or any food.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
totally normal, because
yeah,
you're doing something your body's not used to. You know, it's as simple as that. And what you've got to do is say, right, okay, this is normal. Some people kind of think, oh my God, I'm starting to feel sick. I'm starting to feel a bit nauseous. Oh my, you know, oh, I don't think I can go on, you know, and they kind of start self-defeating, and they kind of like
yeah,
get to the stage, it's like, oh, I can't eat, oh, I'm not going to, you know, and or they'll try to eat the wrong stuff and they'll feel even more sicker, and then eventually they just kind of give up, and then they're gutted because they gave up because they were sick. And you know, sometimes you've got to work through it, and particularly when it's hot. So when it's hot, it's even harder, because when on a really warm day, or if you've got too many layers on when you run, you've got your pack on and you allow your body to get too hot, then your stomach definitely will start to shut down, because what happens is your blood flow starts kind of coming to the surface to try and cool you down. So it's not only trying to work your muscles and your vital organs, it's trying to cool you down. and it's moving away from your stomach. So that is a time where you can start feeling really quite uncomfortable, and some people might even physically be sick. But if you actually just allow yourself just to drink water for 20 minutes, half an hour, and just walk steadily, slowly, you can get through it. Or even sometimes you just have to stop. You just have to stop, find a cool place, sit down, just expect, like, I feel like shit at the moment, but do you know what? In half an hour, I'm going to feel all right. I'm doing an ultra. It's not a race that seconds matter. It's not a race where minutes matter. It's actually over an extended period of time. So if I've got to spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour sorting myself out so I can get my head back in the game, I can make my stomach feel better, and then go again, and then have a go at then maybe just getting back on the drink, having a few jelly, whatever it may be, getting the energy back into me, I can go. And so your head, your brain, your kind of feelings can make a massive difference. And the more positive you can be about it, the better, because ultras do hurt. A lot of the time you're going to feel muscle strains, ligament strains, and it's, you're shuffling along. And if you can push through those things and get to the finish, get that absolutely fantastic feeling of achievement. And so I think that's my kind of thing. Psychologically, you've got to, an ultra is kind of like X% physical fitness, it's X% eating the right stuff, but actually the biggest percentage is your mental attitude towards it. That's not to say that if you don't complete it, you've failed, because you've set foot on the start line. So you've entered, you've done it, however far you get, it's an achievement. But I know just from speaking to a lot of people, they kind of naturally just can't help but feel disappointed when they've had to stop for whatever reason. And I'm just saying that sometimes you can work through it, and you don't have to stop. You can get through it, and you can finish, kind of thing.
It's the old situation versus response, isn't it? It's not the situation you find yourself in, it's how you respond to it. And if you can try to remind yourself that this is not the worst thing you've encountered in your life, you're going to live, and you have to find a way just to keep on moving. And I certainly I faced that in the GB event, going back out that second day, and made the conscious decision I was going to finish it. I knew there was only one other guy, an American guy, that was doing something as stupid as me. And I was, my calf was sort of really away, and there was periods where I really wasn't moving very well, but I was moving. I just kept telling myself, this is going to be over in a few hours. Just keep on going. You deal with the what's sore and how sorry you feel for yourself later. Right now, you just keep on moving. And I was moving so slow at times, but I kept moving. And
and as well, but you touched it then, break it down into realistic, like you're doing, say, call it 50 miles. You break it down into 5-10 mile sections. I can walk 10 miles. If I have to, I could bloody crawl 10 miles. And then you run me 10 miles. Oh, it's only another 10. And it's only another 10. But you just break it down into achievable little goals.
Definitely.
You can just chip away at it.
Yep.
Cool. Right. Well, next time we speak, I'll see you at registration, and then I'll
bring those recovery fuels and the raw energy. Bring it all, mate. I'll bring it all. I'm buzzing. I can't wait. It's going to be good to see you down there. It's going to be good to feel normality of a race. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and just have all those folk around you in the same boat, getting on with it. No, it'll be a great weekend. Great weekend. So and then what we'll do is we'll have a catch up next week, and then we'll talk about how it all went, and we'll see what comes out of it. Right, brilliant.
Superb.
Right, I'll
cheers,
man. See you the weekend.
Okay.
All right, cheers.